The small town of Willow Creek, hidden deep in the dense forests of northern Maine, held a secret. Locals whispered about the woods, known as the Whispering Forest, claiming there was something unusual about them. But no one took it seriously. At least, not until the day 14-year-old Lisa Morrison vanished. Lisa was known for her adventurous spirit. She often wandered the forest but always made it back home before dark. This time, she didn't. Her backpack was found near a trail leading deeper into the woods. Inside was her journal, and the last entry read, "I know they're here. I heard their voices." Lisa's disappearance shocked the entire town, especially her best friends, 13-year-old Ethan, 12-year-old Sophie, and 11-year-old Noah. They couldn't just sit and wait for the adults to find Lisa. They had to act. Their first clue was Lisa's journal. Among the pages, they found cryptic notes that seemed to mark locations in the forest. Ethan, a puzzle enthusiast, deciphered the code. It pointed to 3 spots on an old forest map: the tree with the eye, the marked stone, and the underground entrance. Determined, the kids gathered their flashlights, pocket knives, and a camera before heading into the woods. Their first stop, the tree with the eye. After an hour of searching, they found it, a massive oak with a carved symbol resembling an eye. Beneath it, they discovered a torn piece of striped fabric, Lisa's sweater. Then Sophie noticed something strange. The tree had tiny scratches, as if someone had tried to carve something else. When they looked closer, they saw the message. She wasn't the first. The second location was the marked stone, a large boulder with a symbol, a triangle with a circle inside. Surrounding it were signs of recent digging. The kids hesitated but decided to check. Under a thin layer of dirt, they unearthed a rusted metal box. Inside were photographs of children who had disappeared over the past 50 years. Lisa's picture was among them. On the back of one photo was a chilling message. They belonged to the forest. Panic set in. This wasn't just a disappearance, something, or someone, was taking kids. The third location was the underground entrance. They found it near an old fallen tree, hidden beneath thick bushes. Pulling back the branches, they uncovered a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Ethan suggested they go in. Sophie hesitated. Then, they heard voices. Faint whispers. Coming from below, with their hearts pounding, they descended. The stone tunnel was lined with strange symbols, the same ones from the tree and the stone. At the end of the tunnel, they entered a cavern. And there, tied to the wall, was Lisa. She was alive. Beside her stood a man in a mask. He turned slowly toward them and spoke. "You shouldn't have come here." The man removed his mask. The kids froze. It was Mr. Harper, their history teacher. The one who always seemed kind and warm. But now, his face was cold, his eyes burning with something dark. In his hand was a knife. His voice was calm, yet threatening. "You weren't supposed to see this," he said, stepping closer. Lisa was chosen. And now, so are you. Ethan, always the leader, stepped in front of Sophie and Lisa. His hands trembled, but he held his ground. "Chosen for what?" he asked, trying to stall. Mr. Harper's lips curled into a chilling smile. "To be sold. There are people who pay well for smart, healthy kids. And you, my dear students, are perfect candidates. Sophie's body went cold. She couldn't believe it. Their teacher, the man who helped them with homework and joked in class, was a monster. Lisa sobbed, but Harper didn't even glance at her. Then, something unexpected happened. Noah, the quiet, shy one, stepped forward. His face was pale, but his eyes burned with a strange determination. "I knew you'd do this," he said, looking at Mr. Harper. Silence. Ethan turned to Noah, eyes wide. "What?" Noah took a deep breath. "I helped him." Sophie's stomach dropped. "My family is in debt," Noah continued, voice barely above a whisper. "He promised us money if I helped find new kids." Betrayal hit like a punch to the gut. Ethan's fists clenched, his face burning with anger. "You traitor," he shouted, lunging at Noah. But Mr. Harper moved faster. He shoved Ethan aside, sending him crashing to the ground. Sophie rushed to untie Lisa's ropes. Noah stood frozen, pain etched on his face, but he didn't try to explain. "Enough," Mr. Harper snapped, raising his knife. "None of you are leaving." Then, the cave trembled. The walls cracked. Thick roots slithered through the stone. Rocks began to fall. The forest was waking up. Mr. Harper's face twisted in panic. "We need to get out. Now." Ethan seized the moment. He tackled Harper, knocking the knife from his grip. They wrestled on the ground, grunting and struggling. Sophie freed Lisa, and together they bolted for the exit. Noah stood still, tears in his eyes. He looked at Ethan, then Harper. Then, in a sudden burst of movement, he shoved Harper back, giving Ethan a chance to escape. "Run!" Noah screamed. Ethan, Sophie, and Lisa sprinted toward the exit. But Noah stayed behind. Harper, furious, lunged at him. "You little..." Then, a massive rock fell from above, sealing the cave entrance. The children ran through the forest, hearts pounding, lungs burning. They didn't stop until they reached the edge of town. Lisa was reunited with her family. She never spoke about what happened in the forest. Mr. Harper's body was found in the collapsed cave. Noah was never seen again. The kids never returned to the Whispering Forest. But sometimes, late at night, they still heard the voices from their dreams. They knew the forest was still there, waiting. And one day, it would wake again. Story 2. Shadow in the Forest. The small town of Black River, Oregon, had always been quiet and peaceful. Nestled among dense forests, it lived at its own leisurely pace. But one morning, everything changed. 12-year-old Emily Carter went missing. Her bicycle was found near a forest trail leading to an old bridge. There were signs of a struggle on the ground, but no other clues. Detective Jacob Wright, a former New York City cop who had moved to Black River after a personal tragedy, took on the case. He knew the first 48 hours were critical. But the forest surrounding the town was vast, and time was merciless. Jacob began by interviewing the locals. Most of the residents were sympathetic, but no one had noticed anything suspicious. However, old Mrs. Gray, who lived on the outskirts of town, told him about a strange truck she had seen that evening. She couldn't make out the license plate, but she remembered a large scratch on the hood in the shape of a lightning bolt. Jacob headed to the forest where the bicycle had been found. He noticed that the ground near the bridge had been slightly dug up, as if someone had tried to hide something. Calling in a team for excavation, he found an old cell phone. The screen was cracked, but the device still worked. The last call had been made to a number belonging to a local mechanic, Tom Harrison. Jacob headed to the forest where the bicycle had been found. He noticed that the ground near the bridge had been slightly dug up, as if someone had tried to hide something. Calling in a team for excavation, he found an old cell phone. The screen was cracked, but the device still worked. The last call had been made to a number belonging to a local mechanic, Tom Harrison. Tom denied any involvement, but Jacob noticed that his truck had a scratch in the shape of a lightning bolt. Tom claimed he had been at home with his wife, but his wife seemed nervous and couldn't confirm his alibi. Jacob began to suspect that Tom was hiding something. During a search of the Harrisons' house, Jacob found a basement locked with a padlock. Inside, he discovered a room covered in photographs of children. Among them was Emily. But what shocked him even more was a symbol drawn on one of the walls, a triangle with a circle inside. It was a sign he had seen before in a case he had investigated in New York. Back then, it had been linked to an underground cult that abducted children for rituals. Tom denied any connection to the symbol, claiming it was just graffiti. But Jacob knew it was a lie. He dug deeper and found that Tom was connected to a group of people who regularly gathered in the forest. Among them was the town's mayor, Richard Baker. Jacob realized the case was much deeper than he had thought. He decided to go into the forest alone to find the cult's meeting place. After hours of searching, he stumbled upon an old shack hidden among the trees. Inside, he found Emily. She was alive but terrified. Next to her lay the body of a man who, as it turned out, was her uncle. He had tried to save her but had been killed. Jacob carefully took Emily by the hand, trying to calm her down. She was trembling, her eyes wide with fear. He knew they had to get out of there as quickly as possible. The shack where she had been held was gloomy and cold, with old, battered walls that smelled of dampness and decay. Strange objects lay on the floor, candles, knives, and what looked like ritual clothing. Jacob couldn't believe that such horrifying things could happen in a place like this. They stepped out of the shack, but the forest around them was dense and dark. Jacob felt every step echo in the silence. Emily clung tightly to his hand, her breathing uneven. He tried to orient himself, but the forest seemed endless. Suddenly, figures emerged from the shadows. First one, then another, and another. There were at least 10 of them. They surrounded Jacob and Emily, and the glint of knives and other menacing objects flashed in their hands. Among them was Mayor Baker. His face, usually calm and confident, now bore an expression bordering on obsession. He stepped forward, his voice cold and resolute. "You shouldn't have come here, right?" he said. "This wasn't your business. We're doing this for the town. For its cleansing. Sometimes sacrifices are necessary." Jacob felt his heart sink. He knew they were trapped. His gun was with him, but against so many people, it was almost useless. Emily pressed closer to him, and he could feel her fear transferring to him. He braced himself for the worst, but then, voices echoed through the forest. At first, it was a whisper, then loud commands. Police officers emerged from the shadows, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Jacob felt his body relax, but he couldn't allow himself to fully let his guard down. The police surrounded the cult members, and Mayor Baker, who had seemed all-powerful just moments ago, now looked confused and helpless. It turned out that Tom Harrison's wife, fearing for her safety, had secretly contacted the police. She told them what she knew, and they had arrived just in time. The cult members were arrested, and Emily was returned to her family. She was safe, but her eyes still reflected a terror that might never fully fade. Jacob Wright stayed in Black River. He knew his work here wasn't done. Even after the arrests, Mayor Baker and his followers remained a mystery. The symbols he had seen in the Harrisons' basement haunted him. He knew this wasn't the end. Something bigger, something much darker, was hiding in the shadows of the forest. Sometimes at night, he dreamed of those symbols. He would wake up in a cold sweat, feeling as though someone was watching him. Even in the quietest places, like Black River, the darkest secrets could lurk. And the shadow in the forest was always waiting, ready to return. Story 3. I've worked in hospitals' morgue for over a decade, witnessing life's final moments frozen in time. Every day, I encountered death, observing the fragile transition from the living to the deceased. But little did I know, the most horrifying experience of my career was yet to come. It was a dark, stormy night, the kind that sends shivers down your spine. The hospital corridors were eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of machinery and the occasional echo of footsteps. The room was unusually cold, the air thick with a strange energy that made my heart race. Something was off. As I prepared to carry out my nightly routine, my eyes fell upon a body that was not supposed to be there. A living person had been mistakenly delivered to the morgue and left frozen in one of the cold storage units. Panic gripped me, and a chilling realization washed over me like a tidal wave. How could this happen? How could someone be alive and yet encased in the realm of the dead? With trembling hands, I approached the frozen figure. Their eyes were wide open, filled with sheer terror, as if they had been conscious throughout the entire ordeal. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, as fear gnawed at the pit of my stomach. Unable to bear the sight any longer, I rushed out of the morgue to seek help. I ran through the labyrinthine hallways, the darkness seemingly closing in around me. Finally, I reached the nurse's station, breathless and desperate. I pleaded with the staff to come to the morgue, to witness the impossible. But when we returned, the cold storage unit was empty. The living person, once frozen in time, had vanished without a trace. The hospital staff dismissed my account as a hallucination, a trick of the mind brought on by exhaustion and stress. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had encountered something otherworldly, something that defied the laws of life and death. From that night on, I saw shadows lurking in every corner, and every gust of wind carried whispers of the unknown. The morgue, once a place of solace, had become a chamber of horrors. I was tormented by the unanswered questions, haunted by the thought that the living person was still out there, trapped in a chilling limbo. The hospital continues its operations, oblivious to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. A few days later, I was inspecting the bodies and accidentally came across the same person. Goosebumps ran across my skin, and he looked me straight in the eye. I tried to check his pulse, but his heart was no longer beating. I had been working at the city morgue for over a decade, and during that time, I had seen my fair share of eerie sights. But nothing could have prepared me for the chilling events that unfolded one fateful night. As the only worker on the night shift, I was accustomed to the solitude. But that night, an inexplicable sense of unease hung heavy in the air. As I went about my usual routine, preparing the bodies for autopsies, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It started with small things. A missing instrument here. A misplaced document there. I dismissed them as my own forgetfulness, attributing the lapses to the late hours and my tired mind. But soon, more alarming incidents unfolded. One night, while working on a deceased patient, I turned my back for a moment to retrieve a tool. When I returned, the body's organs had vanished from the tray. It was impossible for organs to simply disappear without a trace. Yet there they were, gone as if they had never existed. My heart raced, and a cold sweat trickled down my spine. I searched the room, desperately hoping to find an explanation. But all I found were empty shelves and vacant drawers. Fear gripped me like a vice as I struggled to find a rational explanation. Was someone playing a macabre prank? Or was something far more sinister at play? Determined to uncover the truth, I began conducting my own investigation. I meticulously reviewed the security footage, searching for any signs of unusual activity. But to my dismay, the cameras had captured nothing out of the ordinary. It was as if the organs were disappearing by some unseen force, defying all logical explanation. Night after night, the inexplicable continued. More organs vanished, leaving behind an eerie trail of unanswered questions. Finally, on the eve of my breaking point, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Armed with a flashlight and trembling with trepidation, I ventured into the depths of the morgue, determined to confront the source of these unexplainable phenomena. I stumbled upon a door I had never noticed before, concealed behind a forgotten cabinet. What I saw next shattered my fragile sense of reality. I saw all the organs on the table that were disappearing. They were laid out in the shape of a human body, as if someone wanted to assemble a new person with their own hands. I immediately ran out of that room and closed the door. But after the police arrived, they didn't find anything in the room. I still don't know what it was or who did it, but the fear that it could happen again lives in my head forever. Story 4. What if your town's hero was actually its biggest nightmare? Football was more than simply a pastime in Blackwood, it was a religion. But when the new member joined the team, everything seemed different. He never said where he came from, never rejoiced with the others. Then, players started disappearing. Whispers spread. Strange symbols emerged on the lockers. At night, something lurked beneath the bleachers, observing. Was this just paranoia? Or had something horrible seized the field? One cheerleader was about to find out, and wished she hadn't. Blackwood, Texas is a place where time stands still at daybreak. It spread among the mesquites and fields, like if torn from an old picture. Highway 36, The town's lone main roadway ran through it like a vein in an oak leaf. Every home had its own story, the white one with the blue shutters, the McCall family, who had been here since the Great Depression, the shabby bar Old Jack's, where the beer never ran out, and the library, which had a wobbly sign that had groaned in the wind for 40 years. Here they lived in accordance with the natural cycle. The children were familiar with every route in the county, from the ancient bridge over the river where they fished for crayfish to the abandoned farm on the outskirts where a mystery fire had happened. They rushed through the streets till dark, certain that nothing evil could happen in Blackwood. Sheriff Barnes carried a gun only for law enforcement purposes. The last significant crime occurred before the current mayor was in first grade. But Blackwood's true heart beats in the high school stadium. Every Friday, when the fall sun casts its final rays through the woods, the entire town holds its breath. Farmers shuttered their stores 1 hour early. Mrs. Peterson closed her antique business, despite the fact that she typically stayed until 9 o'clock. Even the city councilmen, who typically spent their evenings in the saloon playing dominoes, raced to their seats in the stands. The stadium was blazing with dazzling lights, like a lighthouse in a sea of Texas night. The Black Wolves did their magic in front of a crowd of 2,000 people. Every touchdown was a celebration, and every defensive tackle was a titanic struggle. In those times, Blackwood became more than simply a dot on the map. He became a legend. There was no place for secrets here. Perhaps they were too well hidden. Under the creaking old stands, in the darkness beneath the stands, where no one looked. In the vacuous eyes of the team's new player who never revealed his origins. In the black SUV with tinted windows, which occasionally arrived near the stadium at night. Blackwood was an ideal town. But ideal communities, as they say, excel at concealing their dark secrets. The Black Wolves added a new player, Jacob Reynolds, at the start of the season. He sprung into the team's customary rhythm like an autumn breeze into the freezing air before the game. Tall and athletic, he glided on the field with the elegance of a Texas coyote crossing the grasslands. Jacob's magnetism was irresistible. When he smiled, the females in the stands were ecstatic, and the lads in his class grimaced, perceiving his innate superiority. In just a few weeks, he rose to prominence on the squad. His touchdowns appeared to read opponents' minds before they knew it. Coach Danvers described him as a natural leader, and local media had already christened him the unsung miracle. But Emily noticed something that others didn't. When everyone was celebrating their successes, she would catch his brief, unsure looks, moving to the side, as if he was always glancing back at someone. Jacob seldom discussed his history. When asked where he came from, he would merely shrug his shoulders or jest, hell, judging by the training. Then there came the day following training. Emily, who had lingered over a forgotten garment, noticed Jacob standing near the parking lot as the sun began to drop. He was speaking with two males she had never seen before. One was towering, with a stone-carved face and black spectacles that caught the final rays of the sunset. The other was stocky, with broad shoulders, and carrying a huge gym bag that appeared excessively hefty for typical equipment. Their talk appeared strained. The man with the glasses muttered something forcefully, and Jacob immediately stooped down as if he had been struck. Emily unintentionally moved a step closer to get a better look, and all three of them immediately froze. A black SUV with tinted windows was parked a few meters away. The strangers hurriedly hopped inside it, and before the doors could close, the car accelerated away, leaving a cloud of dust in its wake. Jacob turned to her, his face pallid, and Emily noticed something in his eyes that she had never seen in this confident young man. "It's just old friends," he mumbled, swallowing hard. "Don't pay any attention." But his voice quivered. And as he raced away, leaving Emily in the center of the desolate parking lot, she realized something was amiss. Not so for him. Not so for these friends. And possibly not in this entire metropolis. A week following Jacob's visit, something happened that rocked Blackwood to its core. Michael Harris, the team captain, is gone. Michael was more than just the Black Wolves commander. He was the team's soul, the one who sparked a fire in every player's eyes before each game. His laughter resonated throughout the locker room, and his confidence on the field was as rock solid as the canyon walls. And now he's gone. Did not attend training. I did not answer any calls. Didn't leave a single message or indication. His bed at his parents' residence remained unchanged since the morning he was last seen. His favorite outfit was still hanging in the locker. Even his retriever, Buddy, was hunkered by the entrance, waiting for his owner to return. The police launched an inquiry, but all roads went nowhere. Maybe he ran away with a girl, some speculated. Didn't he get tired of this town, some muttered. But Emily knew Michael. He would never abandon the squad before a crucial game. He would never abandon Buddy. He never left without saying his goodbyes. There was one more thing upsetting her. Jacob has changed. He'd grown much more reclusive than usual. He frequently left the locker room during training to chat on the phone, and his countenance was always strained following these discussions, with his hands shaking slightly. One day, while gently passing through the rear room near the stairs leading to the emergency exit, she heard his voice. "I don't want to do this anymore." His comments were low but terrifying, as if he were speaking not to himself but to someone invisible on the other end of the wire. "This is getting out of control." Then a long pause. "You do not comprehend." He was not supposed to find out. Emily's heart fell. He. Who is he? Michael? Her suspicions, which had hitherto been hazy and unpleasant, now got shape. What if Jacob did not join the squad by chance? What if his entrance was part of something larger? And, most crucially, what if he knew where Michael was? Emily was unable to sleep that night while lying in bed. She couldn't stop wondering why Jacob was so terrified. Who is he speaking to? And what exactly happened to Michael Harris? Someone was monitoring her house from outside the window, in the dark. And this person also had the answers. During another game, when the stadium was filled with fan cries, Emily unintentionally discovered a secret that would change everything. As she entered the locker room to retrieve her missing lipstick, she realized Jacob's bag had been stolen from beneath the bench. A black notebook's corner poked out. Emily's pulse raced as she grabbed for the treasure despite knowing she shouldn't. The notebook felt unusual to the touch. The leather cover was rough, as if it had been ruined by water, and the edges were torn from being carried around frequently. Emily froze when opening the first page. These were not ordinary notes. The numbers and characters resembled a cipher, scrawled in a tense yet legible handwriting. Some pages were ripped off, while others merely included single sentences like, "I can't take it anymore." They know. If he said. Emily's fingers involuntarily grasped the notepad. It was evidence. But of what? Without considering the ramifications, she tucked the notepad in her sports jacket. On the walk home, she pondered the worst-case scenarios. Perhaps these were the coordinates of the location where Michael's body was hidden? Or is it the code to something more worse? She spent hours at home, confined in her room, attempting to solve the problem. The internet gave the answer: geographic coordinates. They began a search and pointed to an old abandoned property 15 miles from Blackwood that had been said to be. There was a fire there once. Nobody goes there after dark. They say you can hear voices there. Emily couldn't simply wait. The cops were not discovering anything, and Michael may still be alive. She took a torch, a smartphone, and pepper spray, a 16th birthday gift from her father, and headed out to investigate the truth. Emily visited the farm at night, when even the owls were scared to screech in the deep calm. The road curled like a snake across the frost-covered meadows. The old farmhouse loomed before her, ugly as if it had been carved from a nightmare. The barn stood turned on its side, its smashed windows like empty eye sockets. The wind danced with the creaking gates, producing groan-like sounds. She went cautiously, the crunch of a limb beneath her feet echoing in the dead calm. The flashlight sent a throbbing beam into the darkness, revealing the dust that swirled in the air like ghosts from the past. Then she saw. Michael's belongings sat in the barn's corner, behind a pile of decaying straw. Its form is now dusty and tattered, as if someone attempted to break it apart. Phone's screen is damaged, as if it was hurled against a wall. His favorite bracelet was the same one he wore every day, inscribed with the words, "Never retreat." It was not an escape. This was an abduction. Suddenly, there are footsteps. Solid. Deliberate. Somebody was approaching. Emily dashed behind the boxes, her heart beating so fast that her ears rang. She grabbed the pepper spray in her palm, bracing for the worst. The barn door creaked. Jacob entered. He looked dreadful, with sunken eyes and dirt-covered clothing. He looked about, uneasily, before reaching for Michael's belongings. His hand shook as he gathered them into a bag, as if he were terrified they may explode. "God, what have I done?" he muttered, his voice filled with pain, and Emily's chest clenched. He disappeared as fast as a shadow. But Emily couldn't stop. She followed him, hiding in the long grass, which begged, "Come back." But she didn't listen. Because she realized Jacob was at the core of this nightmare. And if he is still alive, where is Michael? What's worse, who else knew the truth? Darkness covered them both as she followed him to a black SUV parked in the shade of the trees. The game was only beginning. Emily followed Jacob into the night's tight quiet, when the air seemed thick with impending dread. Jacob's black SUV moved slowly through the neighborhood, as if he, too, was attempting to escape attention. She maintained her distance, her hands holding the steering wheel hard and her gaze locked on the red lights on his license plate. Composition. It appeared before her like a ghost from the past, a vast concrete box that had previously served as the heart of the local industry. Now it was only broken windows with dark holes that resembled a monster's eyes. Walls, coated with cruel graffiti stains, bright with the hues of curses and oblivion. The door, suspended on a single loop, groaned in the wind, as if mocking her anxiety. Emily parked 3 streets away, turned off the engine, and remained in darkness. She took out her flashlight and smartphone, just in case. The pepper spray was in her jacket pocket. First steps. Every crunch underfoot was like a deafening gunshot in the eerie calm. It accelerated as Jacob disappeared inside, following him like a shadow. Heart. It pounded like it wanted to rip her chest apart. But she kept going. If not her, then who? Michael may be someplace in that black abyss. The truth was more essential than fear. She approached the door and glanced inside. Inside the warehouse, the air was dense with the scent of ancient wood, rust, and something else, something pleasantly foul that made the stomach tighten. The feeble light of the street lamp, which filtered through the cobwebbed windows, cut through the darkness in wobbly, weak beams. It lit the dust, which swirled lazily in the air like ghosts from the past. Emily leaned herself against the wall, feeling the hard concrete scratch her back. She proceeded gently, step by step, listening for every rustling and groan in the ancient wood beneath her boots. Voices. They resonated from the depths of the warehouse, muted yet deafening. "Are you sure no one was following you?" A low voice bellowed. "No one," Jacob said, but there was an untruth in his tone. Emily got closer, hiding between old wooden boxes that smelled like damp pulp. She looked into the gap between the pallets, and froze. 3 persons stood there, surrounded by weak lights. Jacob seemed strained, with heavy bags under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. The first man was tall, with close-cropped hair that shone in the light and a severe scar on his cheek that appeared to be an attempt to gouge out his eye. Second, short but broad-shouldered, with arms like oak branches. His eyes were cold and vacant, as if he was looking through them rather than at them. "The deal is simple," the tall guy said, stroking the scar as if it were a ceremony. "You continue to perform your role, and we promise that everything will happen as planned. The money will be yours. But if someone asks too many questions..." He did not continue, but his tone conveyed a menace. Emily caught her breath and felt a chilly sweat run down her spine. Her heart was racing so rapidly that she feared someone would hear it. She understood everything. Jacob was only a puppet in this nasty game. But what occurred next flipped her life upside down. Another figure emerged from the shadows, stepping softly, as if he knew every fracture in the floor. Brian. Michael's best buddy. His brother in arms. When Michael got hurt a week ago, he knelt on the field and begged him to stay strong. The one who swore his allegiance to the squad. Now he stood in this filthy storage room, staring blankly at his buddies, unable to identify them. "How could you?" Emily muttered, grasping her temples as if to drive the vision out of her mind. Brian merely nodded at the tall guy, as if reporting. "Everything is under control," he continued, his voice robotic, like a memorized sentence. It was not Brian. That was his shadow. Emily felt the earth under her world crumble. Brian had deceived Michael. Betrayed them all. The most horrifying thing she noticed was that he had no sorrow in his eyes. Only nothingness. There's also fear. As deep as Jacob's. What if he couldn't get out either? What if he was also forced? All 4 of them departed. After a little delay, Emily dashed to her car and sped away from this dreadful spot. Questions raced through her mind, but the time for thought was past. Now it all felt like a joke. Brian had deceived not only Michael but the whole squad. Emily realized she needed to act soon. She meticulously documented all of the evidence, including warehouse images, Jacob's notebook entries, and farm locations. But, before going to the police, she required definitive confirmation. She waited by his car after practice, hiding in the shade of the parking lot. The air was dense with anxiety, and her fingers frantically drummed on the phone's body, which was already recording. When Jacob appeared, his expression transformed, as if he had saw a ghost. He paused, his hand stuck on the handle. "You know where Michael is," Emily remarked, emerging from the shadows. She looked him directly in the eyes, not allowing him to look away. "You know Brian deceived him. Tell the truth, Jacob." "I won't go till I find out." Silence. Only the distant chirping of grasshoppers in the countryside. Jacob closed his eyes, as if gathering power. When he exhaled, his breath trembled like autumn leaves in the wind. "You don't understand, Emily," he said, his voice cracking. "I did not want to be a part of this. They forced me." "Who?" she yelled out, taking a step closer with the phone in her pocket. Jacob looked around to ensure that no one was listening. Then he dropped his voice. "These individuals. They have complete control." Brian and several other squad members were involved in match fixing. They were deliberately losing to generate money. Michael learned about it. He intended to inform the coach, but... He paused, rubbing a scar on his palm with his finger, a reminder of an earlier injury. He was kidnapped to silence the truth. Emily felt her body go frigid. "And you?" she whispered. "Why are you with them?" Jacob grinned cruelly, and in that instant, he appeared years older. "I got recruited. They threatened to harm my family if I did not cooperate." He glanced up at her, and the gulf of agony in their eyes caused Emily to back away. "I couldn't take that chance, Emily. I'm not furious, I'm simply stuck." She peered at him, examining his face for indications of deception. But there was just sincerity there, shattered, tired, but genuine. He was not the villain. He was another victim. Like Michael. Like, perhaps even Brian. "Where is he now?" she said, her tone stronger than she had anticipated. Jacob shakes his head. "I'm not sure. But I can help you find him." He extended out his hand. And in that moment, his eyes were filled with resolve rather than fear. Emily recognized that the time for introspection was past. She painstakingly gathered all of the evidence, as if preparing for the ultimate battle. Conversation records from the phone show Brian threatening Jacob. Photos from the warehouse show blurred but plainly discernible faces of offenders. Coordinates of the property and Michael's bloodied bracelet. Video in which Jacob reveals everything. She reported everything to the police, but she believed it wasn't enough. The evidence was circumstantial, and the culprits were powerful. Then she devised a strategy. The next day, the stadium was full with yells. Thousands of followers, unaware that their idols were traitors, gathered on the field with a placard reading, "We know the truth," her hands quivering but her gaze steadfast. Jacob saw. His eyes were filled with horror. He knew what was going to happen. But there was also relief. The chains had been broken. In a couple of seconds, cops invaded the field. Brian rushed toward the goal but was pushed down. His accomplices attempted to blend in with the crowd, but were called out. Emily dashed towards Jacob, clutching his hand. "Where's Michael?" she yelled, unaware that her voice had become a scream. Jacob gestured towards the exit. "In the warehouse. In the basement. He's alive." The final word he spoke as if it were a prayer. And suddenly everything became muddled up, sirens, screams, tears of relief. But Emily was already running. Because the game has not ended yet. Because the youngster, whom everyone assumed had died, was waiting to be rescued. And she was the only one who knew where to find him. The saga of the Black Wolves wasn't over. Police spotlights lit the warehouse basement, exposing a man resting on dusty planks in the dark. Michael was still alive, but his appearance was horrifying. Sunken cheeks, blue under his eyes, and hands bound with unclean rags. When he raised his head in response to the disturbance, his eyes, despite their exhaustion, shone with a warm glow, the first true light in this hell in weeks. Emily. His voice was weak and barely audible, yet it was so powerful that the girl's breath hitched. He extended a shaky hand, the fingers of which still had blood under the nails. "You saved me," he said, and one whisper contained a full story: fear, hope, and unbounded thanks. I knew you could." Following the affair, Blackwood was never the same. A city that once prided itself on its togetherness and purity now carried an indelible sense of humiliation. The streets, which had only yesterday been alive with joy and support, were now filled with murmurs of treachery. The Black Wolves Squad did not just disband. They were pulled from school albums, images were taken out of store displays, and flags were removed from the stadium front. It is as if they never existed. Like a humiliating page that they are attempting to forget. The worst part, however, was the court hearing. Brian and his pals stood silently, their expressions flat and disinterested. They did not protest or cry for compassion. Their eyes were glassy, as if they were peering beyond the hall's walls into a distant, unknown reality. After the judge imposed the punishment, the question of who was behind it remained unanswered. Because these people were only entertainers. Pawns in someone's larger, darker game. However, there were no responses. Only quiet. Brian's lifeless eyes revealed a single inscription: "We were just part of something much bigger." Emily continued to live her life, but nothing remained the same. She went to school, laughed with her pals, and supported her new team. Everything appeared to be the same as before. But suddenly, shadows had emerged in her world. Shadows that resembled, even close friends may have secrets you should not know. Even in a city where everyone knows one another, the most horrific secrets may be kept. Even heroes may become puppets. Sometimes the reality was so awful that I lost my breath, that it scorched her heart and left wounds on her spirit. But Emily concluded it was better to know the truth than to live in a lovely lie. Because lying is contagious. It progressively eats away at everything, reducing even the brightest emotions to dust. The city declared her a heroine. Her photographs appeared in publications, she was interviewed on the radio, and passers-by on the street smiled at her. But that didn't matter to Emily. The key thing was something else. That she rescued Michael. The one who halted the evil that threatened to ruin their small planet. Something that helped Jacob achieve atonement. But every time she passed the old stadium, she felt as if someone was watching her from beneath the stands. Every time the wind blew through the abandoned warehouse's broken windows, she could hear murmurs. "Are you sure it's over? Are you sure you found out the whole truth?" Emily didn't respond. But deep down, she understood that certain mysteries remained hidden in Blackwood's shadows. They'll resurface sometime. Emily saved Michael. She revealed the plot. She even helped bring the criminals to justice. Is that really the end of it? That night in the warehouse transformed her life. During games, she sometimes feels like unseen eyes are watching her from the empty stands. In the abandoned barn where they discovered Michael, noises can still be heard through the rotting wood. If you believe you know the entire truth, you are misinformed. The game has just started. Would you have remained silent if you known what they did to the other missing players?